My sister burst out laughing when my parents kicked me out at 17. Last week, she applied for a job at my company, so I made her beg in front of the team before showing the video of her calling me a useless orphan when I slept in my car. I remember the sharp chill in the air that night, the kind that wraps around your skin and reminds you you're alone. It wasn't snowing yet, but the wind carried that dry, sharp bite of early winter. As if the weather itself had been waiting for this moment. I stood on the front steps with a black trash bag gripped in one hand, clothes spilling out the top. My backpack was slung awkwardly over one shoulder, the zipper half broken from overuse. Inside, it was everything I could grab in less than 5 minutes. A few notebooks, my phone charger, and a half-eaten protein bar I didn't even realize I'd stuffed into it. The door slammed behind me with finality, the sound echoing in the silent street. I didn't cry. I just stood there, frozen, not because of the cold, but because I hadn't expected it to really happen. Not like this. Not with her standing in the doorway, arms crossed, smirking like she was watching the end of a bad movie. My sister Emily, 2 years older, always the favorite. She didn't even try to hide her amusement. She tilted her head and laughed, not just a snort or a smirk, but a full, open laugh, like this was the best joke she'd heard all year. "Don't come crawling back, you useless orphan," she said, and the door locked behind her. I stood on the porch for a long time after that. Long enough for the porch light to shut off automatically. Long enough for my phone to buzz once, probably some notification I didn't care about, and die completely. No missed calls, no texts, nothing from either parent. They didn't even ask if I had somewhere to go. I ended up parking in a 24-hour grocery store lot. The kind of place where no one asks questions if you lean your seat back and pretend you're just resting. My car was a beat-up sedan I'd inherited from an uncle no one really liked. It barely started in the cold, and the heater coughed out more noise than warmth, but it was all I had. I parked under a flickering light post, shut off the engine to save fuel, and laid back. It was the first of many nights like that. The school I went to had no idea. I made sure of that. I still showed up every day. I washed up in gas station bathrooms. I used public libraries for Wi-Fi. My meals came from vending machines when I had enough coins, or from discount bins near closing time. I kept my head down and studied hard. No one suspected. If they did, they didn't say anything. My parents never called. Neither did Emily. They didn't care if I was still alive. In their eyes, I stopped existing the moment they pushed me out of that door. It took a full month before I stopped expecting to hear from them. 2 months before I stopped hoping. By the 3rd month, I was just surviving. Quietly, slowly, deliberately. I found a job loading stock at a warehouse overnight. It paid almost nothing, but it was enough to keep gas in the car and food in my stomach. The manager didn't ask questions as long as I showed up and didn't complain. I didn't. I got used to the ache in my back from sleeping in the driver's seat, got used to the noise of the world outside at 3 a.m. It wasn't comfort, but it was control. And I held on to that. Years passed like that, not all in that car, but in constant motion. I took night classes, I worked 2 jobs. I stopped expecting apologies. I started building, quietly. No social media posts, no announcements. I learned code, learned finance, built a small digital service, something people needed, something scalable. At first, it made enough to get me off the street, then enough to get an apartment, then more than I ever thought I'd see. By the time I was 25, I had 50 employees, a downtown office, a name people recognized, though not my full name. I'd cut ties so deeply that even my last name had been legally changed. No one from the past could find me unless they were looking closely. I didn't advertise. I didn't have to. Then last week, I saw the name on the application list. Emily Carter. I stared at it for a long time. Not a common name. Not a coincidence. Her resume was polished, but not remarkable. A degree from a decent school. Jobs that looked better on paper than in practice. She listed her experience in corporate outreach and marketing. Claimed to be passionate about impact-driven enterprises and employee-first cultures. I kept reading even after I'd already made up my mind. She had no idea I ran the company. My name wasn't on the website. I didn't attend most interviews, but I changed that for hers. We scheduled it for a Monday morning, 9 a.m. She showed up 10 minutes early, dressed well, not overdressed, but with just enough effort to show she wanted this. Her hair was tied back the same way she used to do it in high school when she wanted to impress teachers. She walked in smiling like we were going to catch up over coffee. "Hi," she said, her tone light, practiced. "Thanks so much for having me." I returned the smile, said nothing. She didn't recognize me. The team let her speak. She talked about her goals, about how she believed in team culture, about how her last boss didn't value her ideas. She spun stories about creative campaigns, about driving numbers up through authentic branding. She said all the right things. She even laughed a few times, trying to make the room feel warm. No one laughed back. I let her keep going. Let her sell herself completely. The salary she was asking for was high, but not impossible. The position she applied for was senior. It came with influence. She wanted a leadership role. I waited until she finished her pitch. Then I pulled my laptop from the bag beside me, quietly. No sudden moves. I connected it to the screen at the front of the room. The projector blinked to life, displaying my desktop. She glanced at it, still not realizing, still hopeful. I opened the folder labeled Archive 2017. Clicked on the only video file inside. The footage wasn't professionally recorded, just an old home camera video from the hallway security camera, back when our house had one installed temporarily after a break-in. The angle was slightly off-center, but the audio was clear. Crystal, in fact. It showed a 17-year-old boy stepping outside in the cold. A trash bag in his hand. A girl in the doorway, arms crossed, laughing. "Don't come crawling back, you useless orphan," the voice echoed from the screen. Then the door slammed. The room went quiet. You could feel the temperature drop. Even the air conditioner's hum felt louder than it should have. Emily froze. Her smile fell. She stared at the screen like it had punched her. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Her eyes finally landed on me. She recognized me. All the color drained from her face. "Wait, she started. I didn't let her finish. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get up. I just looked at her and spoke calmly. "We're not hiring family right now." No one in the room moved. One of the junior analysts looked from me to her and back again. No one said a word. I closed the laptop, stood up. She was still staring. She tried to speak again, but it didn't come out right, just a broken syllable. I walked to the door. "You can see yourself out," I said without turning back. And then I left her in that conference room. The hallway outside the room was long and empty, but I didn't slow my pace. I could still feel the weight of everyone's eyes in that room, even after the door had closed behind me. No one said anything as I passed the open desks. Some of them had known me since the early days of the company, when I was pulling 16-hour days, writing back-end code on outdated hardware with borrowed power strips. Others were newer, unfamiliar with my personal history, but none of them asked questions. That silence said more than any words would have. I reached my office, closed the door, and stood behind my desk without sitting. My hands rested flat on the smooth surface, and I stared at nothing in particular. My mind wasn't on the meeting. It wasn't even on her. It was back in that moment on the porch, the wind stinging my face, her laughter carrying out behind me like a cold gust. There was no satisfaction in the scene I'd just created, no surge of triumph. What I felt was more like a pause, like a breath after holding it too long. She had come into that room expecting opportunity. What she left with was consequence. Not because I sought revenge, but because she came to my table wearing the same face she wore when she slammed that door. A knock came at my door. Soft, hesitant. I didn't answer. The knock came again. I opened the door without a word. Emily stood there, arms clutched in front of her, the mask finally stripped off. Her confidence had drained away, leaving behind something unfamiliar, uncertain, unsure, diminished. She didn't look me in the eye. "I didn't know," she said, voice barely audible. "I didn't know this was your company." I stepped aside. She didn't move. I didn't repeat the gesture. "I shouldn't have said those things," she continued. "Back then, I was stupid. I didn't mean it like that." I shut the door again. She knocked once more. "Please, just 5 minutes." I let her in this time, not out of kindness, not because I needed her apology, but because I wanted her to see what she had thrown away. Not just me, but every single bridge she'd burned, thinking they'd never be needed again. She walked in like she was stepping into a courtroom. Her shoulders hunched, her posture guarded. She looked around the office, not in admiration, but in discomfort. I wasn't laughing at you, she said as I sat down. I mean, I was, but I didn't think it would actually go that far. I didn't think they'd really kick you out. I looked at her without reacting. They were angry. You said things, too, remember? She added quickly. It wasn't just me. The whole family was falling apart. It wasn't my fault. I didn't remind her that I hadn't said a word that night, that I'd simply refused to cover for her lies, and our parents had chosen her version over the truth. I didn't remind her of the stolen checkbook, the forged signature, or how I'd taken the blame just to keep the police out of it. I didn't bring up how they said I was stirring drama for attention. I've changed, she said, her voice trembling now. I've worked hard. I'm not that girl anymore. I didn't come here to stir anything up. I needed a job, that's all. I leaned back, hands folded in my lap. I watched her fidget, watched her try to summon the charm she always used when she wanted something. It wasn't working anymore. You showed them that video, she said suddenly, her tone shifting. In front of everyone. Why? Why humiliate me like that? I didn't speak right away. I didn't come here to start a fight. I came here because I thought that this was a place that believed in giving people a second chance. I didn't correct her. This company does believe in second chances. It's built on them. I just don't hand them out to people who tried to bury me. You left me outside that night. You laughed while I stood there with nothing, I said finally. And when I slept in my car for weeks, you called your friends and told them I deserved it. Her eyes widened. Yes, I heard, I said before she could lie. You thought I was too far away to hear, but some people still had decency. They let me know what you said. Every cruel word. I was young, she whispered. I was 17. The silence between us stretched out until it felt like the walls would crack under it. She looked away. Her lip quivered, but no tears came. Maybe she'd used them all already. Maybe she didn't have any left. You don't owe me forgiveness, she said, almost like a confession. I know that. But I need this job. I need something to start over. I stood and walked to the window. The city stretched below us, cars moving like distant thoughts, people weaving between sidewalks and intersections, each with their own quiet war to fight. I remembered when I used to look up at windows like this from street level, wondering what kind of people lived up here. You didn't come here for redemption, I said, still facing the glass. You came here hoping your past wouldn't matter, hoping I'd forgotten. You thought time erased everything. She took a step closer. I can't change what happened. I can't take it back, but I'm asking, please, give me a way to move forward. I turned to face her. Why? She looked caught off guard. Because I have nothing else right now. You had everything when I had nothing. That landed like a slap. She took another step back, like she finally understood I wasn't playing a role in her story anymore. I wasn't her younger brother hoping to be accepted. I wasn't looking for approval. I lost my apartment, she said. I left my last job after complications. I've been applying everywhere. Why'd you leave? Her mouth tightened. It wasn't the right fit. I didn't ask for a euphemism. She hesitated. I was let go. Something about internal issues. Management said I didn't collaborate well. I believed that. Every word. She'd always believed she was the smartest person in any room, that everyone else just needed to listen. I'm not proud of how I acted back then, she said, but I'm trying now. Isn't that what matters? I studied her face, the way her voice strained at just the right moments, the way she kept her shoulders low and her words soft. All strategies, all performance. What happens if I give you this job? I asked. Do you tell yourself you earned it? Do you tell your friends we're good now? I tell them I was lucky you gave me a chance, she said. Do you even remember what you did to get me thrown out? She looked away again. I covered for you, I said. You know that. You lied to them. Let them throw me out to save yourself. I know. And you never came looking. Not once. I was afraid, she said, though it sounded hollow even to her. No, you were content. You thought I was gone for good. You thought I'd disappear. She swallowed hard. I didn't know how to fix it. You didn't want to fix it. But that broke the last of her composure. Her face sagged like the words had ripped something loose inside her. She sat down slowly, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I'm asking, if there's anything you can give me, anything at all, please. I'm not above starting at the bottom. I'll do anything. I didn't respond. She stayed seated, waiting, and I let her wait. Eventually, I walked back to my desk, sat down, and opened my computer. I clicked through some internal folders. She didn't say a word, just watched me quietly, eyes hopeful and desperate at once. I printed a blank contractor form, pushed it across the desk. "This isn't a full-time position," I said. "No title, no salary. You work as needed, project by project. No promises. You take direction. You don't lead." She nodded quickly. "Thank you. Yes. Absolutely. You report to someone who isn't me. You won't speak to me directly unless it's through proper channels." "Understood." "Mess up once, and you're gone. No warnings, no appeals." "I won't." I stood. "Then we're finished here." She took the form, stood slowly, and walked out with the paper in her hand like it weighed 50 pounds. She didn't look back. I watched her leave, then turned back to my screen. The past had shown its face again, but I wasn't 17 anymore. The weeks that followed her return weren't quiet, but they were orderly. Emily kept her head down. She arrived early, left late, never brought up the past again. She worked like someone being watched at all times, which she was, but not by me. I stayed removed as promised. She reported to Lauren, the operations manager, who had been with me since the early prototype days. Lauren didn't tolerate shortcuts or excuses. That was why I'd given Emily to her. If anyone would test her, it would be the woman who'd built this company beside me through failure and risk. Emily took assignments like a contractor should. She followed instructions, responded to feedback. She wasn't great, but she was serviceable. There were no major mistakes, no visible arrogance, but also no spark, no leadership, no initiative. The charm she once wielded had worn thin. I kept my distance, not out of anger, but because I had nothing left to say. There was no lingering pain, no need for closure. I'd already walked the hard part of the road alone. What remained now was practical. She'd asked for a chance, and I'd given her the lowest version of one. Nothing more. Then came the incident with the internal report. It was routine. We ran weekly analytics to track performance and engagement on client-facing campaigns. Emily had submitted a deliverable for one of the major client accounts we'd just secured. Her task was simple: compile research and draft an outreach plan. She submitted it ahead of deadline, neat formatting, crisp language, but there was a problem. 2 paragraphs were lifted, word for word, from a competitor's archived content. Lauren flagged it immediately. She didn't accuse. She just called me into her office, pointed it out, and said, "This is yours to deal with." I nodded once and said, "Bring her in." Emily came in 20 minutes later, unaware. She sat across from me in the same chair where she'd begged for an opportunity weeks before. This time, her posture was stiffer. She knew something was off. I didn't waste time. "We found copied material in your submission," I said. "From another firm. It's traceable." Her face didn't move. "Do you deny it?" "I didn't mean to," she said. "It was a mistake. It wasn't 1 paragraph. It was 2. Structurally identical. Phrases lifted exactly." "I was under pressure," she said quickly. "I thought I'd just borrow parts to build from. I planned to rewrite it but ran out of time. You submitted it as final." "I know." She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She looked at me like she already knew this was the end. "I told you there wouldn't be a warning," I said. "I understand." I didn't need to say more. She stood, nodded once, and walked out. No parting words. No emotional appeals. Just silence. That should have been the last of it. But life doesn't always clean up as neatly as we'd like. The next morning, I found a sealed envelope on my desk. No name. Just plain paper, folded neatly. Inside was a handwritten letter. The first line: "You probably won't care to read this, but I wanted to leave something honest behind." I read it all the way through. She wrote about how she hadn't expected me to survive, let alone thrive. How she'd always thought of me as the backup child, the quiet one, the mistake they never knew what to do with. She admitted her cruelty, not to seek forgiveness, but to acknowledge it in plain words. She said being kicked out had been a moment that defined my life, but for her, it had just been another win, until it wasn't. She wrote that after I left, the house grew quieter. My parents turned on each other. The blame shifted. Fights happened more often. By the time she graduated, they'd barely spoken to each other. She tried to hold their attention, but the satisfaction of being the only one left didn't feel as good as she thought it would. In her 3rd job, her manager reminded her of our father. Distant. Dismissive. She started making mistakes. She said the lies caught up eventually, and by then no one trusted her anymore. She wrote that applying at my company was never meant to be a trap, for her or for me. She just saw the name, Googled the address, and thought, maybe finally she'd escape her own failures. The last line read, "You didn't need to humiliate me to get even. You already won. I just didn't realize it until I saw you sitting in that room, calm, in control, while I was still trying to fake strength I didn't have." I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Months passed. She didn't contact me again. No messages, no phone calls, nothing on social media. The company continued to grow. We secured 2 more high-profile clients. I brought in new talent, expanded the office space, and started mentoring 3 interns from the city college. Lauren got promoted to Chief Strategy Officer. We opened a second location. I kept the envelope in my desk drawer, not because it held value, but because it marked the true end of something. For years, I'd been walking with a shadow. Her words that night, the door closing behind me, the cold porch, the silence that followed. The moment she laughed while I stood with nothing. Now, it was just memory. Not a wound. Not even a scar, just something that once happened. The company earned recognition. I was invited to speak at panels. People asked how I'd built everything from scratch. I never told them the full story. Not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't owe it to anyone. Pain was the foundation, but resilience was the blueprint. I didn't return to that house. I didn't reach out to my parents. I never looked back. One morning, a year after I last saw her, a former colleague forwarded me a job listing from another firm. A familiar name appeared under the contact section. Emily Carter, Outreach Coordinator. No photo, no extra flair, just a title. She'd landed on her feet in some small way. I closed the page and moved on.